first ingredient of relapse prevention for me is being able to recognize feelings, being able to name them, to express them, tolerate them, and then figure out how the heck do people regulate those. And that is complex. It really is complex, and it doesn't happen overnight. Early in my recovery, I had a calendar, or one of those inspirational things. I found I needed inspiration multiple times during my day early in recovery. And I thought about feelings. I wasn't really sure what I was supposed to do with them. I always wanted somebody to tell me, what am I supposed to do? This feels terrible. What do I do? I made a lot of phone calls. I reached out. I wrote. But the calendar said, feeling my feelings is how I get through them. And I remember at the time, it was probably in the early 90s, thinking, oh, it had never occurred to me because that was not my experience growing up. You didn't feel stuff, you stuffed stuff. You kept your feelings inside. Of course, I didn't know I was doing that. That happened as a result of recovery. But in relapse prevention, we have to feel our feelings. When we have COVID on top of our recovery, we need even more support for recognizing feelings, naming our feelings, expressing them, tolerating them, and regulating them, and knowing we are not alone. We need validation of our feelings. Hey, I understand if you're feeling lonely and isolated. Hey, I understand if you're feeling stressed out by being at home with family members that you didn't like before COVID. There are a lot of things that people are having to deal with. One of the ways I frequently will talk to people on an emotional situation to help heighten their sense about their skillfulness is I will talk to them about whatever it is that's going on with them. And I will say, wow, that sounds really hard. How are you dealing with that? How are you getting through those feelings? To see what they say, because what they say tells me a lot about what their coping resources is. How many of you have ever heard one of your patients or a sponsee say, in response to how they're dealing with things, they'll say, I'm keeping busy. I'm just keeping real busy, right? So one of the most common first things we do is we stay busy. Have a plan. How many of you heard have a plan? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Having a plan is great. Putting structure in place, keeping with structure, keeping with that helps us to stay in a contained place. And when you aren't used to tolerating feelings, that's really, really important. Although when you think about it, how many of us have difficulty tolerating joy, right? We don't sit around and say, oh, holy cow, how much longer is this joy going to last? I don't know if I can take much more of this joy. But we do that if it's painful, right? We do that if it's uncomfortable, instead of looking at what's the opportunity for this emotion. And what I always say to folks when they're going through really hard times after giving lots of validation is, you know what, this is such a great opportunity for you. You are getting stronger and stronger. Your emotional muscle is growing. And I think we have to feed ourselves and our patients. That's what I did this morning. Okay, I'm not going to present it the way I wanted to, but I'm letting go of that attachment. It's going to be fine. I'm just going to let it go. And that's hard. It was not easy, but it was easier, way easier than it would have been 20 years. I would have had a meltdown and unraveled. So we do have to feel feelings, name feelings, and we need others to help us with that. But feeling our feelings is how we get through them. And there are more feelings this time of year. COVID, holidays, trauma, right? So all of those things, and people tend to get really hard on themselves about them. Ingredient number 2 is physical, right? Physical recovery. Obviously, the behavioral things that we tell people at this time of year, stay away from using places and faces. Sounds simple, but may not be easy. What if you live with a using face? I don't know about you, but many of my patients are in that position, right? How do you help people to find ways to get through their difficult situations, maintain their sobriety in the face of what seems like unsurmountable odds, right? So you give them specific, right, things to do. Connect with a peer coach, go to meetings. There are plenty of virtual meetings. What can you do, right? This is a checklist. There are physical things, but one of the best things we can really support patients in doing is moving. You know, the old King Julian from kids movie. Now I'm going to blank on the name, but we like to move it. I just envision him moving, physical movement. I included on your handout my one of the books that is just an excellent resource and speaks specifically to how activity, physical activity, makes such a difference in our brain chemistry. You know, and everybody can do something. And I tell folks all the time, something is always better than nothing. Okay, so everybody can do something. Mental ingredients, right? The thinking, right? Our thinking is affected by how we feel, but we can change our thinking. And when we change our thinking, we can have a different emotional experience. You can be present and sit with and notice. Again, another thing I encourage is thinking about your thinking and use a journal. A journal is one thing you can use, and you don't have to be at a meeting. You can be at a meeting. You can be anywhere and write. Affirmations. And one of the beautiful things I think the 12-step program got right years ago was they put affirmations in short, simple terms. It works if you work it. Keep it simple. Keep coming back. They dispensed wisdom in little pithy sound bites that people could repeat and continuously rehearse. And that is what it takes. And now more than ever, we need those statements, and we need to take them in, and we need to share them with others. So affirmations, reframing an experience, looking for opportunity versus challenges, and turning a challenge into something that can strengthen you. And the last ingredient is spiritual, because I'm running out of time, right? So spiritual ingredient, continuously pray, meditate, breathe, reach out. One of the most important things is connecting with people. And there's so many ways to connect. You know, when I was worried about my connection this morning on the computer, I'm like, not only do I have a laptop, but I have this, you know, Surface thing that I hardly use, but I'm using it today. I have a cell phone. I have all these ways I can connect. I can see people. I can talk to them. I can text them. I can still write letters. So there are all kinds of ways to connect. And it goes at, it's one of the things that's so hard, right, for people in recovery to do, because we're not about connecting and we're not about letting others help us. And yet one of the single best ways to feel a spiritual connection is to be in a position to help someone else. It takes you out of yourself. It gives you a changed experience. It's also a really helpful tip for preventing relapse. And there are many opportunities now, right? Another reframe for COVID is look at all of the opportunities it has given us to find ways to be helpful to others. So I will wrap up there, and I'll let Emily introduce our next speaker.